objective of this work is to make visual the main urban features of Johannesburg and show very strange constraints that the city faces. It's a short presentation of the densification process of the city. The following maps show a schematic time evolution of the city. The first challenge of Johannesburg is its history. The apartheid is indeed left its mark in the spatial, social, and economic structure of the city. We can see on this map schematically the fragmented organization of the city with the white area and the black area, but with the main belt which separates these areas. But the second challenge relates to the duality of urban development in South Africa, torn between public policies on the one end and private development on the other end. This duality is driving the wedge between the northern suburbs that concentrate wealth and jobs, the center that seeks to regain its former dynamism and economic influence, and the densely populated southern suburbs. Today, Johannesburg appears more fragmented than ever. The spatial fragmentation of the city, due to its topography and its history, has been amplified by the politic choices that contributed to physically divide the territory even more. First, there is transport corridors, rail and roads, which are hardly crossable urban cuts, and the decline of the tertiary sector has accelerated the decline in industrial areas. The number of brownfield sites has increased, expanding the mining belt in closed spaces and creating urban enclaves throughout the city. The polycentric city is a traditional pattern of city growth, with a dense and large urban core, surrounded by dense subcenters. These structures support agglomeration economies. The Johannesburg metropolitan structure is unique inherited from its complex history. It displays inverted polycentricity with satellites, urban areas larger than the core of the city. High-density areas are far from the metropolitan core. I would like now to speak about defining the spatial structure of Johannesburg and to explain the constraints. 1,600 meters above sea level, in the rich water-strong mountains, the city of Johannesburg is characterized by a fairly hilly and steep topography. The chain of hill, you can see it very well on this. You can have the cut of the city. The chain of hills cuts the city in two along an east-west axis that separates the north and the south of the city. The geological features such as ridgelines, slopes, hills, valleys, and rivers create urban areas naturally disconnected from each other. Topography splits the urban landscape into a series of fragmented spaces well before the apartheid policy would strengthen this existing division. Today, topography still strongly impacts the city organization. The following maps show schematically the historical evolution of the city. The lack of data makes it hard to calculate the morphology for each period, but we can understand with map the evolution. The urban morphology of Johannesburg was largely defined by two concomitant phenomena that reinforced each other and laid the foundation of a structurally and socially fragmented city. Originally, the gold rush and the massive needs for a workforce led to a dramatic population growth in the city. In a mostly male-dominated city, housing was monitored by the authorities in the form of land use plans, different housing areas well defined. Meanwhile, the development of rail infrastructure allowed the city to exist economically, all goods being transported by train from Cape Town or Durban. In 1892, Johannesburg had an efficient rail network that split the city in two along an east-west axis. As a result, the city was organized around a buffer zone occupied by railway lands, industrial areas, and warehouses. However, the skeleton of the modern city of Johannesburg dates back to the underwear period, when the municipality tried to address housing shortages mainly for the poor white population, but also for black Africans. Housing areas for Africans were consolidated in the southwest of the city, here, which the hidden purpose of distancing the African population from the white areas of the city center. Apartheid policies only sustained and strengthened segregating measures of previous decades. Like many cities in the world, including the US, the boom of car ownership heavily impacted urban morphologies on the spatial structure of the city. From the 60s on, the apartheid government opted for the car as main mode of transport. Meanwhile, the dismantling of the tram network in 1961 greatly contributed to reducing the attractiveness of the city center by creating denser car traffic and congestion. The congested center has progressively been abandoned in favor of suburban areas more accessible by car. In the early 80s, urban sprawl has mostly taken place along transit axis, with a massive dilution of economic activities. The recent urbanization, fed both by public and private urban developments, keeps the very same logic, pushing further the limits of the city. It's very interesting to see different types of new urbanization in the city. Each sector is growing in different parts of the territory without their mixing. You can see here's a new townhouse on the States, formal houses here, and informal houses here. Johannesburg, like all South African cities, experienced significant structural changes since the 90s. The first major change relates to government directives. After the 1994 election, access to private property became the foundation of the post-apartheid reconstruction. Driven by the presidential program, the Reconstruction and Development Program, RDP, was launched in a major large city with the aim of putting an end to urban inequalities inherited from apartheid. In Johannesburg, the production of new housing took primarily place on cheap land in the distant, you can see here, in the distant periphery in the northwest area, more than 25 kilometers from the CBD, and around existing townships like Soweto and Alexandra. The private sector largely contributes to shaping the city and its special organization. You can see the legend, I'm sorry. The types of urban form answering to security issues in residential areas rest upon the paradigm of privatization. The need for security leads to the market to produce radical urban and architectural forms commonly referred to as estates, upper-class housing, or townhouse, middle-class housing. This urban phenomenon is growing and worsens racial segregation, expressing the fear of the others and a strong sense of insecurity. The land-intensive urbanization based on gated communities feeds a massive conversion of rural land into urban land in the northeast of Johannesburg. This type of urban development is exclusively residential with very low level of mixed use. It is characterized by a very low connectivity of the street network and a strong and entrenched hierarchy of space. This type of urban forms reinforce socio-spatial fragmentation. It's very difficult to see. Today, there are at present 180 informal settlements in the the city identified in 2009, and their population is growing faster than the average growth rate of the city. Informal settlements in Johannesburg are located mainly along an arc from outskirts of the city of Urbanism Park in the northeast, in the northwest, Leicester, Glen, and Orange Farm in the south. Informal settlement often take place in the buffer zone along the former townships such as Soweto and Alexandra. This map shows the characteristic of this new form of residential urbanization. We can see here that the rich areas have a very, very low density. And density exists only in informal settlement in the city center. Yeah. So it's an example for Paris average density population in the city. It's a very fragmented development with no mixed use norms. In the one end, there is private production of housing for middle and upper class market. On the other end, the production of housing promoted by the public sector on satellite waterfront. We can see it easily with the color. Here, the private sector, red, purple, and red color, and the green is the public sector. Yes, so this part is to explain and to illustrate the fragmented and sparse urban forms. About the residential density, Johannesburg has an extremely large footprint for a city of 4.4 million people. Residential settlements in Johannesburg are less dense, have higher standards of roads and open space, and have less mixed land use than in residential settlements in other cities of comparative income and size. For example, you can see the footprint here of Johannesburg, Berlin with 3.9 million inhabitants and Madrid. The job housing and housing mismatch is really interesting to see in Johannesburg, very particular. Main characteristics is high density residential settlement far away from employment areas. You can see, for example, Soweto, which medium density here, and very far from different parts of different employment areas. And these employment areas are dispersed in clusters through the region. The labor market is efficient when it is integrated, but when it is fragmented, it shows its efficiency. The fragmentation of residential areas and the dispersion of employment centers contributes to a high unemployment rate for the poor. It's a case for Johannesburg. The poor can fully participate in the labor market when they are specially dispersed beyond 1 hour commuting time from employment areas, or when transport costs represent more than about 10% of income. In Johannesburg, transport costs represent more than 50% of income for some poor households. I would like now to focus on urban forms and to try to understand if densification is synonymous with urban intensity. We can see on this map you already seen the urban sprawl of the past 30 years in purple on the map. Very, very big area. Most of the street patterns have been created recently, following modernist principles. I focused the study on 4 districts with recent densification patterns. Each area is characterized by a strong urban densification in Australian, Lévy, and Morphological. These four densification patterns cover a huge diversity of contexts. This diagram shows on the same scale the urban area hosting 5,000 inhabitants. It's a very big difference between each area. On these following maps are an illustration of inequal densities of amenities in the town. I list public facilities like schools or clinics and private institutions like small. For each district, the study area, which are in black here, has a population of 5,000 inhabitants. These surfaces are extended with a 2-kilometer size to take a step back on the interactions of these neighborhoods with their surroundings. The identification of public or private facilities and amenities highlights the level of urban intensity. You can see here for the group on one fishery, the big gap on the outer, on the right here. The density of urban amenities varies a lot across districts. You can see it but the number of amenities per 1,000 inhabitants varies a lot more. You can see even in the goal, it's really not efficient for the population. About Lévy. In the very center of the city, Lévy is a very urban district with high population density and high building density. In the 70s, it was apartheid designated whites-only area, but soon became a grey area, where people of different communities live together. However, due to the poor planning, its infrastructure could not cope with the rapid population growth. This, together with lack of investment, led to an exodus of middle-class residents in the 80s and the decay of major buildings, leaving its wake of an urban slum by the 90s. Densification patterns take a very particular form in the city center through over-occupancy of flats. High-density neighborhoods with high-rise buildings located close to the city center host a large population of poor migrants looking for employment opportunities. According to the South African National Census, the population increased by 50% in 10 years. We can see here this photo on the map. Show ads in surprise fall in Lévy Main Street. One can see a huge number of ads for renting a balcony or small space enclosed by curtains in a dining room or a bed to share. This is often a temporary solution for tenants waiting for an improvement on their personal situation. One fishery. It's an extension of Soweto. It's an RDP district developed in the early 2000s. RDP houses have typically been sprawling development of one-floor houses on individual plots with low densities that is currently experiencing a rapid informal densification with shacks. This district juxtaposes formal and informal social houses as well as informal structures within backyards, called backyard buildings. The emergence of informal housing in the RDP areas is partly related to a failure of the South African national policy of formal housing that gives priority to property ownership rather than rental housing. However, this informal settlement highlights the coexistence of owners and tenants in the same plot. The map shows here on the evolution here. The map shows the location of these informal housing areas in the heart of Fisherville. The evolution is slow because it's linked to individual investment capacities of owners. The first step of the process usually consists in building walls or fences around the plot. We can see it, the evolution. And expanding the original and building shacks. About morphology. It's a typical middle-class gated communities far north of the city center. North Riding is fairly representative of the impoverishment of urban structures in Johannesburg recent urban developments. Few roads serve the area which is entirely car dependent. Houses are small and have a medium floor area ratio on building footprint. The development of this type of district is led by the growth of the middle class. It is indeed affordable property, also with little, if any, amenities and green spaces. Security ensured by fences and private yards is the core marketing strategy of this real estate concept. The rapid development of multiple gated communities nearby ensures social homogeneity and stability. At the Houghton estate, Houghton was developed as a residential area around the turn of the 2000th century. Houghton is centrally located. It's located less than 5 kilometers from the city. It's historically a wealthy area organized around golf courses and leisure areas. In the Houghton estates, densification patterns are driven by market pressure. The process rests upon the subdivision of plots. This division of land parcel is decided by the landowner. This initiative, far from being marginal, are a new pattern of urban development that makes sense across the city and locally reshapes neighborhoods in terms of urban morphology, landscape, population, or sociology. This type of residential densification results in the aggregation of individual behaviors that, taken as a whole, changes the city. You can see a lot of plots on the area of Houghton and to the back. This densification method represents a cheap alternative for the municipality with no immediate investment in network, roads, etc. However, it has become necessary to manage urban development because the water and electricity grids are falling into disrepair and will soon become saturated. Well, this map makes visual the main feature of Johannesburg with the floor of the town, the importance of the highway and road infrastructure corresponding to the old characters of the society, fragmentation in neighborhoods in the age of the sustainability policy, and the general movement of enclosure of homes, offices, shops, and even including large urban function spaces with controlled access, rules and practices of private security necessary to the city, unequal access to basic services. But the map also teaches us about the strong constraints the city is confronted with, a complex and fragile natural environment, the speed and radical change in the urban space in the 90s, and the perception of the need for security, the economic progression of the mining or industrial city into a mainly tertiary economy, and finally the immigration pressure from rural areas in the entire continent.
Yes.